Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto Manga chapter review. This one's going to be for chapter 29, which is called Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. And another enjoyable chapter. I continue to enjoy the general arc, where we're going, what they're doing with some of the characters and stuff like that. I continue to also not particularly enjoy the format, the pacing, how the monthly chapters and the lack of page count, plus what feels like sort of padding to fill out a longer chapter. I don't particularly enjoy how that's feeling right now, in that this chapter felt exceptionally short. I've read chapters of weekly manga that are easier, that take longer to go through, have more depth to them than this. And I think a large part of why this one felt really padded out was that, one, we basically got the same fight 2 times directly in a row with only kind of minor changes. Okay, Boruto uses the karma in the second part of the fight, he didn't use it in the first, but most of the choreography that they show is pretty much the same between the two sections. It's just oh, Boruto's stronger, Naruto has to use a shadow clone to defend at one point, but he still more or less ends the same way. And it's not really this incredible learning curve. Maybe just the fact that, okay, Kawaki can just activate his karma at will, and he now knows that him activating his activates Boruto's, so that's something. But is that worth, filling up 10 plus pages of the chapter when it could be covering a lot more? That's what I'm not sure about. That's why I keep saying, for the most part, these chapters tend to feel like maybe 2 chapters worth of content rather than 4, which the monthly format is effectively filling in for. But there was still good stuff in this chapter, don't get me wrong there. So the chapter sort of bookmarked with the idea of Kawaki's still stewing over the idea of if he should sort of indulge Boruto by going ahead and kind of gluing back together the vase that he broke from a couple of chapters ago. And then at the end we see that he's actually going to go ahead and do that. And again, the other thing that bookmarks the chapter is Kashin Koji entering the village, and then Kashin Koji locating Kawaki. So that's another thing that sort of made the chapter feel a little kind of padded out, was just that the very start of the chapter basically just recapped, for the most part, what we learned at the end of the last chapter. I get they went into a little bit more depth, and Delta was like, oh, he's trying to avoid me, that's why he's going in here, and he can get through the barrier, but I can't. He's trying to do this on his own, and avoid my surveillance. And again, they're still teasing the fact that potentially he is a Leaf Village person and they know him, or he has some way to get around it. So that's still a reveal that's waiting to come out. The fact that he uses, the toads is interesting. But again, they still leave that right there of just, oh, we're still waiting to see just exactly what Kashin Koji is going to do. So this was just a whole month of kind of extending that plot, which is fine to do across maybe a few weekly chapters, but right now, waiting monthly, it just feels really, really extended out. Again, because most of this chapter is filled with a sparring match where I feel they could have got the information across much quicker. They could have used less panels, less pages to get what they ultimately got to in that fight, which was, for me, what I took out of it was just that Kawaki and Himawari were actually kind of talking to each other on the sidelines, and he wasn't really being rude to her. She was actually being nice to him, so she seems to kind of like him. And she was obviously filling him in on the kind of ninjutsu stuff that he doesn't particularly know about. But outside of that, I don't think we learned a lot from that fight specifically, just that, oh, Naruto acknowledges that Boruto is getting stronger, and not just because of the karma mark, he acknowledges that just in the general sparring, he's getting stronger as well. I did like the use of the kind of, the reconciliation kind of handshake type thing, just the kind of honor between ninja, and that being a kind of the thing that compares what I suppose Kawaki is seeing now compared to where he was in the past. At that, here he's seeing basically a fight between father and son, but it was a sparring match. There's no ill will here. It was just a sparring match to test each other's strength, versus I suppose his experience with his father figure and it being this very cruel and brutal experience, which we've seen obviously their interactions before in previous chapters, and you felt for Kawaki, and you feel again here with the fact that this is obviously how every training session went between them. It was just unlock the karma or bad stuff will happen. You are suffering. You are hollow. There's nothing to you, but this karma mark will fill the karma seal will, I suppose, fill the hole that is like present within you. And it's very like manipulative. There's a very lack of care, and that's why Kawaki is kind of growing so much from being around Naruto, and just the complete difference and the complete comparison between his two sort of father figure characters in his life. So I thought that was, particularly well done, and we obviously know where things have gone now, and we're beginning to sort of get the details about what exactly the karma mark is about. But this was more about getting across the emotion of Kawaki, which has been done very well. That he's gone from being the most like rude character we've ever seen in Naruto, who is just impossible to talk to getting this real understanding of him, and you actually want him to kind of become part of the family, like be Boruto's friend, kind of see Himawari as like a little sister figure, view Naruto as a father figure, that sort of stuff. And I think that was got across even more in what I felt was the best scene of the chapter, which was Kawaki and Naruto talking. And what was so interesting about this was obviously that this is where it's kind of brought up the idea of like, oh, you're interested in ninjutsu, and he again brings up the fact that you almost forget about him, that like he's not actually a ninja, and they kind of confirm it directly here, like he can't use chakra, or at least doesn't know how to use it at this point in time. Now they could reveal something about like the way his body works now, maybe he can't use chakra, but he at the very least hasn't done any ninja training, so he doesn't know that sort of stuff. And he brings up the idea like, oh, maybe actually I'd like to learn the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, because that would be an interesting one in that I could make a clone and fight myself. And I think he gained an extra amount of like respect or understanding of Naruto, that he's not just this perfect guy who became the village leader. He doesn't particularly know Naruto's backstory, and so Naruto kind of giving him these little breadcrumbs of like, I'm more similar to you than you think, I've just kind of grown from it, and how I've done that is with my friends and so on. And the first bit of obviously like, no, that won't work, you trying to fight and I suppose kind of kick some sense into yourself by fighting yourself, that's not going to do anything. I know, I've tried it, I'm a living example of that. It won't work, and that kind of shocks Kawaki. But then when Naruto brings up that friends will kind of change your outlook, he's like, that I'm also a living example of that. And Kawaki's already sort of beginning to see that, and I think that's why he, after that, goes out and goes to fix the vase that he broke. Is because he realizes that, actually, if Naruto's gone through all of this stuff and can change, so can I. He hasn't said as much, but that's what you get the impression of. That's why he's kind of considering gluing it back together at the start, but then it's why he actually goes to actually make it happen right at the end. So I thought that was solid enough, and that's when Kashin Koji obviously spots him. So it's a weird one in that I really don't think there's a lot to this chapter to really kind of get into, in that as much as I did like the Kawaki scene and the general, I suppose, where Kawaki is after this chapter, it wasn't so much where it felt like, yeah, we needed a chapter to get these exact details about Kawaki. I would have preferred a little bit more plot progression, and we could kind of gradually continue to do the Kawaki kind of face turn more or less as we go on. So that's what's frustrating, is just that they're basically like, oh yeah, the last month's cliffhanger was just a tease. This is the real cliffhanger, Next month we'll get Kashin Koji and what he's up to. We promise you. But even that's kind of like, oh, will he directly go ahead and activate whatever plan he's doing next week, or are we going to be waiting even longer? So, I think the thing with Kawaki that we're still wondering about in terms of a kind of direction off into the future is, given that we know he eventually goes down the path of like he is a villain, he and Boruto are at odds, is it just this kind of few days experience here for Kawaki that changes him, or does he end up staying longer? Which is why I'm kind of wondering, does Kashin Koji, what he does here, does he immediately take Kawaki back and they have to go get him back, or does he maybe try something and then realize that no, I can learn more by him actually being here and him seeing how he changes? So that's going to be another interesting one to see. Of it, does Kawaki just get taken away here and gradually form into the villain after this? I think you still probably need to do a little bit more, because I would honestly say that I think Kawaki and Naruto kind of has been developed a little bit more than Kawaki and Boruto. They sort of have an understanding, but I think they still need to interact and I suppose become friends before a lot of that stuff happens. And I think that has to happen before you have them be at odds with each other. So that's going to be an interesting one to see how they play it with regards to just what exactly Kajin Koji's trying to do here. Because a good few chapters ago, they basically were okay with the Konoha shinobi taking Kawaki back to the village because they too wanted to learn what the Karma Mark could do, being around another Karma Mark. And they almost haven't given them enough time to do anything with that, because we've only seen them sort of use the Karma Mark together like once or twice. And it seems like we haven't learned a ton about how exactly that dynamic works. So that's where I'm sort of unsure. Is it just that Kashin Koji is going to be spying on them as they go about their... like, he's just going to be there in the village constantly spying on them, and then something will happen? That's what I'm not sure about. But you know, solid enough chapter, but this one, more than a lot of chapters recently, felt very much like, yeah, that continuous problem of just a monthly format, and them not doing I don't think a great job at really, like, I think, filling in this chapter with a month's worth of content. This is one of the most egregious examples of it not really feeling like that much. But yeah, that's my review for this chapter. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this one, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.